gives up his body and departs, thinking of me alone, he comes to my status of being, of that there is no doubt. Arjuna asked in the second verse of the 8th chapter, Prayanakaya cha katam gnehosi nihat atma bihi. How are you to be known at the time of departure by self-controlled? This question is very essential. We saw earlier that this 8th chapter of the Gita is called Aksharam Brahma Yoga, the yoga of the imperishable Brahman. It is a chapter to help us prepare for death. I gave the example of examination in the last class, and death is a compulsory question in the exam that we cannot take as an option. It is about how one can remember the Lord at the time of death. The scriptures say that this question of Arjuna is great, and any person thinks about the answer that the Supreme Soul has given to this question and applies it to his life and behaves according to this, then good will happen to them and it will be kalyan, excellent for their well-being. Arjuna's question is this: how can the Lord be remembered at the time of death? We have regarded death as an unfortunate situation in regular life. If there is one fear that is the biggest fear for one in life, then the human being will feel as if it is the fear of death. There are many different types of fear, such as the fear of survival, the fear of status, etc. There are many different types of fears, but if there is the biggest fear of all, then it is the fear of death. People even fear at the talk of death. Death is regarded by people as impure. People are sitting down to eat, and somebody begins to talking about death, then the other people at the table would tell them not to talk about something so fortunate. This is untrue, because death is very pure and very greatly fortunate. Guruji knows when he was young and they used to sit down to eat, then if he spoke about something unusual, then his mother would tell him not to talk about that. He still often says it whenever he's in that type of mood that, while I'm here you're not remembering me, but when I go then you'll know. If Guruji would say this, then his mother would tell him to be quiet and sit there silently. His mother would tell him not to speak like that. He would ask why she's telling him to sit there silently, because it is certain that we will have to go. His mother still tells him to sit there quietly. His mother would tell him that you do not know, you just got, I don't know what came into your mind that made you say this. This is right, because a mother has feelings towards the children and he respects this. He used to say this, tease his mother. What I mean to say is that the subject of death, speaking of death and talking about death is regarded by us as unfortunate. When there were professors of logic at college, they teach their students that man is mortal, Socrates is a man, and hence Socrates is immortal. This is what they say to explain logic. This professor is going to die. Therefore the professor should say that man is mortal, I am a man, and therefore I am immortal. But he very conveniently forgets that he is going to die as well. He puts the burden of death on Socrates, and doesn't matter because Socrates went 2,500 years ago. Now there is not much of a way. Why does anyone not think that they too are going to die? The moment that the human being realizes that I will die, then the preparations for death can begin. When a person realizes that he has to go out of town and the ticket is confirmed, then does a person not automatically begin to pack his bags? Of course he does. Then does the person not have to go there? I once heard a very beautiful thing. If a lot of people are sitting together in a room, all of them have come there with a return ticket. Is there anyone in the group with a single ticket? If there is, they should raise their hand. There is nobody who is here without a return ticket. Everybody has come here with a return ticket. Why then do people have this fear about the return ticket? We should think about death. The reason why a person fears death is because a person knows that there are many disappointments in life, but most of them can be straightened. But if anything happens, then somebody else will hold their hands. That these can be pains that can be shared with others. I may not get the chance to eat in the morning, but in the evening, somebody will come and place a piece of bread in my hands. I may be hungry for one day, but it does not matter because someone gave me food on the second day. These are disappointments that can be solved. If one loses his job, then it does not matter because he can get another job. These are problems that can be solved. If a relation breaks, then it does not matter because another relation can be made. These are problems that can be solved. This is the situation with every problem. But if death comes, then who will hold your hand? We know that nobody can hold hands, and a person who could hold our hands will only hold our bodies while we've already gone far away. Who will be there with you at that time? The That is why human beings say over and over again, Samay maro saath jevala, karupane kalvala, itna to karna swami, ab prante se nikle, Ganga ji ka tad ro, ke Jamna ji ka tad ho, mere sarvana jo nikat ho. Oh God, just do this. When the soul leaves the body, the banks of the rivers Ganga and the Yamuna should be near when my life leaves the body. These banks are not remembered throughout one's whole life, then how can they be remembered through one's last moments? One is running around throughout their whole lives so that these banks, how can these banks come during their last moments? No, but at that time, one does not remember the banks, but it's only because one has wishes and there are pure wishes. One asks God to do this much. Why? The reason is that at that time, one knows that nobody else will be able to hold their hands and nobody else will be able to support them. Therefore, when nobody else will be able to support one, then one needs God's support. That is why one asks God to come. One needs the Supreme Soul at the time of death. One does not need the help of anyone else. A friend of Guruji's became a doctor. He studied extensively for 5 years after 12 years of his general studies. It was so hard to get an admission in the first place, and even after getting admission, he continued to work hard. When he became an MBBS and went to practice on his first day, he was going to the hospital and the people in his family had held a party for him becoming a doctor and going into practice on his first day. Chunky smiling, the doctor in the house. So going further, he reached his house during the evening and he was coming back from the hospital. He saw this doctor was very depressed. They were all waiting for him that he'd come and would be so happy because it was his first day of medical practice. They were wondering why he was looking so sad. Guruji asked him what was wrong and he told him that he had gone to work in the morning with very big hopes and that he would go on his first round as a doctor at the hospital. He used to go as a student, but this was his first time as a doctor. He went to the OPD, and in the OPD there was a case where a person had had an accident and a lot of blood was coming out. When that patient came in front of him and he measured the patient's blood pressure and realized that the person was not going to live long because he was losing so much blood, the patient's family members were sitting around him and the patient grabbed his friend's arms and said, "Doctor, please save me. Doctor, please save me." Because the patient must have realized that he would not be able to live for long. The patient grabbed his friend's arm and was begging for him to save his life. His friend read a report which showed that this person was not going to live for long. When this person was telling his friend to save him, and death could be seen in front of my friend's eyes, then his friend told him that he was helpless at that time. His friend did not know how to handle the man or how to tell the man the truth. His friend could not tell the man clearly that he was not going to survive. His friend knew that he was going to die, but his friend did not know what he should do with the man. His friend thought that the 6 years of medical studies he had done and the 12 years of study he had done before that all went down the drain when he faced his first patient on his first day. This is because his friend has just been taught throughout these 6 years to prescribe medicines. He was taught to look at symptoms and to decide on the medicine having looked at those symptoms. But when all the symptoms became negative and all the medicines went to waste and the person prepares to go on this great journey, then the 6 years of study did not teach his friend what to do or what to say. He said that, "I felt so frustrated at that moment. The patient had so much faith in me and the patient had so much trust in me. For him, doctor was God and I was standing there helpless." Think about it. How can one accept death? What should one do during the time of death? This is what the 8th chapter of the Gita teaches us. The rishis of the East have thought a lot about the subject of how one can accept death. Just as important it is to make one's life beautiful, it is just as important, if not more important than this, to make death beautiful. We have many arrangements in order to make life beautiful, and there should be. We have schools, colleges, libraries, universities, hospitals, temples, and many other things are there in order to make life beautiful. All of these are doing a very beautiful job, but with that I would like to add something else. Death should also be made beautiful. Death should be made fortunate. Because while death does not become beautiful, then the beauty of life has no meaning and no worth. If somebody has never seen what the material of clothes is like, but has just seen a print of clothes, then you're not able to determine properly the value or the price of the clothes. The print can be of many types, but it depends on what the material is. In the same way, if one does not understand the reality of death, and just value themselves based on the print that they have in life, then life can be regarded as incomplete, and not just incomplete but wrong. We must learn to accept death. How can we make death beautiful? God explains this in the 5th verse, that one should remember God at the time of death. When can we remember God in the time of death? If one has remembered God throughout their life, only then will they be able to remember God during the time of death. It is a very simple and straightforward thing. What do we do throughout our lives? A great saint has said it very nicely, that to ensure that remembering the Lord does not become limited to rituals, one should at the same time serve human beings and serve the world. This is the ideal combination, remembering God and serving the world. Only then will a person's life be balanced. Instead of this, people do it the wrong way around. What we do is to serve God, and this is a good thing. I'm not opposed to worshipping God, and you must do this, but we stick to the same rituals that we think that we should serve this small idol and nobody else. We make the service so limited to serving only God while we remember the world. What we should have done is remembering God and serving the world, but instead of that, what happens is that we serve God and we remember the world. We always keep remembering the world and the material world, and that is why our death gets ruined. This is because at the time of death, all we remember is the material world. We have not thought about the Lord, and that is why we do not remember the Lord at the time of death. You should carry on doing the service and rituals that you're doing, and I'm not opposed to them, but remember that this service is a symbol, and that this service should extend beyond the idol made out of wood and stone, and reach the service of every human being and every world. If one places a full plate in service of the Supreme Soul every day, yet the person living next door is hungry, then will the stomach of one's Supreme Soul be filled? Will the Lord be happy? Then one should certainly put the full plate in front of the Supreme Soul, but one should remember that one also has often to put the plate in front of the God living next door, and something should also go inside his stomach. One should therefore remember God and serve the world. That is why God says here that one should think of God at the time of death. God is going to say later, Sarveshu Kaleshu Mam Bhajanti. Remember me always. One should think of God all the time while serving the world. Who can you remember? Srimad Ramanacharya has said it very nicely in his commentary that Purvakala Brash Vishyate Eva Anta Pratya Ojayantare. It says the final thought results only about an object previously contemplated upon. The final thought results only about an object previously contemplated upon. If I were to say it in simple language, then that which you have no experience of does not get remembered. If a person has never eaten sandwiches in his life, then he never remembers sandwiches. This is because he has no experience of sandwiches. Does an Aborigine living in the jungle ever remember sandwiches? We remember sandwiches at midday on Monday, but the Aborigine does not remember sandwiches because the Aborigine has no experience of sandwiches. Therefore, if you have no experience of something, then you will never remember it. Therefore, if you have experience of the Supreme Soul, then feelings will arise for the Supreme Soul, and you will attain Madbhav, thinking about the Supreme Soul. You should have experiences of the Supreme Soul every day. Shri Krishna uses the word Antakale. What does that mean? Exactly. It means at the time of death, Sangita. If we try to look at it in reality, then every moment is Antakal, the time of death. The reason for this can be explained in two ways. The first is that every moment, one person or the other has the Antakal, time of death. At each and every moment in time, one person or the other has the Antakal, time of death. I'll show you a small experiment. You should make diary for the 365 days of the year, or 65 days of the year. There are many people, in particular those at schools and colleges, where they keep a record of everyone's birthdays and wedding anniversaries. It is very nice that they do this, and after keeping that diary, they call the other person their birthday or the wedding anniversary to let them know today that it's their birthday or today is their wedding anniversary. They write this in their diary systematically. You should also make a diary where you write everybody's death anniversary. In a few days, all the pages of your diary will become filled. This is because each and every day, one person or the other has died. One time or the other is somebody's Antakal, time of death. I say as a joke that there are many families that they have a lot of contact socially. These people have difficulty because they know a lot of people in society. They have to keep a white sari in their hands. This is because they read an obituary in a newspaper every day and find out they have to go to a funeral every day. I think that in their wardrobes, half those are white saris, the other half is colored saris. They have to keep this and have no choice. Kachal was near to his death. He was in a hospital and his illness had been going on for a very long time. His wife was sitting by his side and everyone else was frustrated. Kachal had a feeling and told his wife that he feels as if he will not live for very much longer. His wife said that the doctor had said the same thing. Kachal said that he might not be able to live, he might be able to live for maximum of 4 days. His wife said, it doesn't matter, I've lasted 40 years with you, so I will pull 4 days out from some place or the other. Kachal said, but I'm sad about one thing, that is that I've seen you during all the important occasions of my life. Do you remember that I met you during the wedding of my older brother? A wedding where the best man and the chief bridesmaid got married and both sisters got married in the same house and you look beautiful. The wife said yes. Kachal said, when I saw you at my brother's wedding, you looked so nice and you had worn a green sari. The wife said yes. Kachal then said, then I saw you at our own engagement, then at the day of our wedding, then when our children were born, then I saw you when our children got married. I have seen you at each and every occasion of my life, but I'm sad about one thing, is that I will not know what you look like at the time of my death. The wife said, do not worry, the white sari suits me very much. We have such a big family and so many relations that I have to wear a white sari 15 days or so a month. But now I will wear it for the entire month. No why I like this, it's just black comedy. What I mean to say is that each and every moment, somebody or the other is having their antakal, time of death. Secondly, it can even be our antakal, time of death. Na chani udan ki nathe, sevaru shu tanuche, sarve ni vachoridyo, agli shane su tavanuche. I do not know what is going to happen the next morning, leave the next morning, what is going to happen during my last moments. Nobody knows what is going to happen during the last moments. That is why we should always remember God. Thirdly, we think that if we are on a pilgrimage, then we would attain liberation. The reason behind this belief is exactly this. If at the time of death there is an atmosphere related to God, then that individual is certainly delivered. That is why we say, Kashi Maranat Mukti, one who dies in Kashi gets liberated, or Surat nu Janam ne Kashi nu Maran, means eat in Surat and die in Kashi. This is because if one is on a pilgrimage, then the vibrations that they bring create such a beautiful atmosphere, as a result of which the individual leaves his body at that place in the pilgrimage, then he'll be delivered. On the other side, Shri Krishna is saying here that one who remembers him at the time of death attains to him. God has not said that one who leaves his body while on a pilgrimage attains to him. The meaning of this is that if one remembers the Supreme Soul at the time of death, then the godly atmosphere and the pure vibrations that are by themselves created lead to that place becoming a place of pilgrimage. That is why the places where great saints have left their bodies have become places of pilgrimages, and they are worshipped as places of samadhi. Who knows what samadhi means? Yeah, when you meet God, when one meets God. If you go to Anandi, then there is a samadhi, place where one meets God, of Gnaneshwar Maharaj. Anyone heard of him? I like the word very much when they call this place Moli Gnaneshwar. I often heard the name but did not understand what Moli meant. My Marathi is not so good, and only sometimes Guruji Marathi is enough to speak to people at work. Why do they say Moli? Guruji, and I can't understand the meaning of Moli. Guruji once asked a guide, was with him one day, why they call it Moli Gnaneshwar. The guy told him that word Moli is from the villages and it means mother. Just like in Gujarati they say Mori, in Marathi they say Moli because Gnaneshwar is a mother. On the other side they say Gramba, Gnaneshwar and Moli for mother. Gnaneshwar is mother because a saint is like a mother. The Samadhi, the place where one meets God of Gnaneshwar, has still been preserved and is such a pure atmosphere. If you have been there, then you will feel like this. It is a place where you can sit in peace. It is very beautiful. I remembered Nanva Gnaneshwar, and that is why I say that the place where a saint leaves his body becomes a place of pilgrimage. What was so blissful about the place before this? The reason for this is that the atmosphere that was there at the time becomes a pilgrimage. That is why God says here that if one thinks of God at the time of his death, then he attains to God. If the atmosphere becomes so pure, then where would that individual soul go? Shri Krishna says that such an individual attains to him, and of this there is no doubt. In the Gita, Shri Krishna has used words and phrases like this many times, such as Na Shanshaya, Natyatsta Shanshaya. Shri Krishna speaks with a lot of confidence. In the same way, Shri Krishna gives a guarantee here that one who remembers him during his last moments while leaving his body, that person attains to God. Of this there is no doubt. In the 6th verse, Shri Krishna gives a principle to buttress this thought. It is a principle. In the 5th verse, Shri Krishna has given a particular case where if one remembers him while leaving his body, then such a person attains to him. And what is the general principle of this? Shri Krishna says this in the 6th verse. This is a general rule. A person attains the state of being with which he gives up body because he's always absorbed in that thought, is always thinking about that thing, and he is coloured in that colour. If a person is thinking of a state when he leaves his body, then that shows that throughout this person's whole life, he has thought about this, and this one thing has become more and more powerful within him. The same thing is remembered by him during his last moments, and this is why it is very straightforward that his next birth will be of that type. It is a general rule. The 5th verse of this chapter, Shri Krishna spoke about a particular thing that if one thinks of him while leaving the body, then one attains to him. Then in this verse, Shri Krishna told Arjuna the rule that not just remembering him, but if an individual remembers anybody or anything while leaving the body, then that is where the individual goes. This is a rule worth understanding. First of all, what is remembered at the time of death? Vinoba Bhave explains this very nicely. He asks what one's whole is. Vinoba Ji gives a definition of this, that life is about collecting samskar, mental imprints. What we do from a young age is to collect the samskar imprints. This can be good or bad. All the actions and actions that we do leave imprints on our minds. We keep remembering these things. If our samskar imprints get left in our minds, what then happens? Do we remember all the imprints that fall on our minds? They go into the subconscious mind, but do they remain in the conscious mind? No, they don't. If we just look at our thoughts, then we may have lived life for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, or 50 years. Out of these, we forget the first 5 years of our lives. We do not even know about them. We do not know how we were born, where we went, or what we did. We do not remember anything from the first 5 years of our lives. We see a photo and we are told that that is what we look like, but we do not remember. Srimad Adi Shankarji says, Balavasya Kriyavastha, meaning we do not remember what we did when we were very young. And that is why it went. Did we do these actions or not? We did do those actions. After we were born, we may have played, sat in so many people's laps, spoiled so many people's clothes, etc. We would have done all of this, but do we remember that? No. That is why when your aunt comes and tells you that when you were young, you did this and that, and she had worn a sari for the first time and you ruined it, at that point, we may think that yes, we may have done all of that, but we not remember, yet has that action taken place or not? Of course it has. Therefore, we do not remember a lot of what we did when we were young children. After the first 5 years of one's life, there is another level, and that is our previous lives. If we cannot remember what we did in the first 5 years of life, then how can you remember what we did in our previous lives? There is so much to remember, and it's the Lord's grace that we forget all of this. I do not want to go from that subject, but we forget everything we did in our previous lives. We forget all actions to such an extent that we doubt whether or not we had a previous life. People ask whether they had a previous life or not. They ask whether this can be possible. We completely forget all of our previous births. We also forget the early years of childhoods. There are days that we have now. How much do we remember even in this life? We get older and we become understanding, but do we remember anything? How many actions must we be doing throughout the whole day? Before you go to sleep at night, remember what you did throughout the whole day. You'll hardly remember 5, 7 or 10 most important events of the day if you try your hardest, and they'll come to your mind. If you had an argument, then you remember it. If you had a fight with Mr. Shah, then remember it. This is one of the few things that you can remember in the whole of the day. This is your earning from the whole of the day. You just remember that, you did this, and you do not remember anything else. You did so much in the day that you have forgotten about all of this. You keep remembering what was the most important event of your day. In one day, you remember 10 tasks, then the second day went, the third day went, the week went, then you try to remember on Sunday night what you did a week ago. The 5, 7 or 10 activities we had remembered that day will not be remembered on that Sunday night a week later. On that Sunday night, you only remember the most important events of the week. Those things that were the most important activities you did on each day will be forgotten, and you only remember the 5 or 7 most important events of that week. Now go to a month. You will now even get all the activities you did each week, and you only remember the 5 to 7 most important activities of the month. Now go to a year. Now so many activities of each day are forgotten, so many activities of each week are forgotten, and so many activities of each month are forgotten, and you only remember those events of your year that are most important and that you feel are the most important. Then what about your whole life? In the same way, you only remember 5 to 7 events when you have to sleep at night. In the same way, while leaving your body, death is a deep sleep, and the time of leaving your body, you will only remember the 1 or 2 most important events in your life on which your mind has been stuck, and will not remember anything else. End of the verse. Okay, so I've closed prayers.